Okay, we're live. Awesome. And I'll just keep an eye out just in case Blair does need to get on.
Great.
But yeah, we're live. We're officially live.
Woo!
Yeah.
Yay.
And then I think, give me 1 second. I think I can also share. Let me see if I can share a window. Okay, so I could share some of the like clips of the Poughkeepsie tapes. If we can. If
Clips.
little small like bites, so like 5-second bites, not anything because I don't know if like YouTube will ban us for something.
Oh yeah.
But
I should have had my I love Poughkeepsie coffee mug. That would have been
Oh, yeah.
yes.
That would have been fun.
Steffany, do you want to just start us off with introducing yourself, and then I'll introduce myself, and then we'll go through everybody else?
Yeah, of course. So as most people who are watching this know me, I'm Steffany Strange. I am a YouTube host, and we have very, very special guests, and I'll have you guys go in order. I think Stacy, start off with Stacy, if you want to start off introducing yourself and
Yes.
know.
Hello, everybody. I'm Stacy Shabosky. I played Cheryl Dempsey in Poughkeepsie Tapes. And I got my face bashed in quarantine. And I was in a car accident in Devil. And I died twice in No Escape. But I didn't die at all in which one? As Above, So Below.
And As Above,
That's
yeah.
it. I'm married to John, and Drew is my brother-in-law, so they just keep killing me.
Is there an intersection there? You guys got married?
They got married. They got married like 2 weeks before we started shooting Poughkeepsie Tapes. So we were like in the honeymoon. Poughkeepsie production was like in the honeymoon phase.
Yeah. Actually, we were doing wedding stuff. We were doing wedding stuff, and like we were pretty chill about it. We don't really care. We kept hello.
Hey, Blair.
Greetings.
Hey, Blair.
We kept the wedding pretty low key, but at some point I was like, John, you have to make a decision. Like, this is important or something. He's like, I mean, it's not important. It's not like production design for a movie or something.
Yeah,
good point.
And she got what I meant. And,
yeah, I was like, I get it.
We were good now.
80 people are going to see us get married, and hopefully more people will see the Poughkeepsie Tapes.
Yeah, but we did have a good run of killing Stacy in every show up until
those were good times.
As Above, So Below. I don't know why we didn't make it happen on that one, but we broke the streak.
Oh, we couldn't. There just wasn't enough characters because we were under the ground, so there was. We tried to figure out a way, but there just wasn't, extra people to kill.
Could have been a course. We could have figured it out.
Oh, this opportunity.
We could have figured it out. That would have been good.
Drew, you want to do an intro?
Oh, yes. So I'm Drew Dowdle. I'm on the Poughkeepsie Tapes. I produced the movie and co-wrote the story with my brother John. And that was a really fun movie to make, and kind of the first movie that we were able to sell and started our career. It was our second movie, but it kind of started our career.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm John Eric Dowdle. I wrote and directed the Poughkeepsie Tapes, and then have moved into we've done a whole bunch of stuff since then, and we now have a podcast called The Showrunner Show, where we talk about the business of making television shows and how that works, and inner workings of that.
Awesome. Blair, you want to go next, and then I'll finish it up.
Yeah, hi. I'm so happy to meet all y'all. I'm a big fan of y'all's, and I'm really excited to chat. So thanks for being here. I'm Blair Bathory. I'm the podcast host of SomethingScary, and I'm also a horror filmmaker myself. And we're in the Blair Witch Project in solidarity.
Oh, nice.
So
I love it.
Love that.
Awesome. And our audience doesn't know me that well, but I know you because I am the social media team lead in the creepiest way possible. And I wanted to connect Stacy and Drew and John and our SomethingScary fans, because I realized there was so much overlap with what everyone does in the horror genre, especially like found footage and things like that. That's so trendy right now on social. And just in general, the Poughkeepsie Tapes, but a lot of the things that you guys do are all over TikTok. So, I guess we'll start with Poughkeepsie Tapes, and then we can go from there. Take it away, Steffany.
Yeah, and there's what's what I really love too is that there's so many people in the comment section that are saying some good questions. Like someone said, "How did you even come up with the idea?" How about we kick it off there? Like, how did you come up with the idea? What inspired it? Because as someone that also dives into true crime, you guys touched in a lot of bases and elements of like different types of motives of serial killers, and it was so intriguing that the character evolved as the film went on. Like you had kidnappings, couple, attacking couples in a car, abduction, everything. So how did you come up with the idea? How did the character, and also like how did you come up with the character? Yeah.
Well, yeah,
John, you
I'll
wanna-
jump in. I'd say it started, honestly, we had a lunch with, uh, a mentor of Drew's of mine and Stacy's brother, Stephen Shabosky, who, wrote The Perks of Being a Wallflower and directed that. And he's part of our family. And we had lunch with him one day and we were talking about, like, would there be a way of doing, something that you could make on a budget that could look much bigger than, for what you made it for? That, Drew and I had our previous movie went to Slam Dance, and then we'd programmed for it. And we learned, like, oh, what, festival programmers, like, you can tell in like 2 minutes, like, what kind of budget, a film has. And so we were just riffing, like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to start with like a big helicopter shot, with something, and then, shoot most of it on video. And so we were, thinking practically, and it sort of opened up our mind to that kind of idea. And then later that day, Drew and I were talking, we're like, what if we did something, a serial killer's home movie collection? We call it the Poughkeepsie Tapes. We'd never been to Poughkeepsie, had no connection to it, but it just sounded scary.
It's just a fun name.
And it's a good name. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's murder to spell out. Murder to spell.
Yeah. And very hard for people to pronounce. There's a lot of
And spell, as we learned on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, it started kind of from there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it kind of started like like John's saying, like structurally, we always wanted to do a horror, but that was like, we're kind of thinking creative structurally, and then John kind of had this like serial killers home movies. And they're like, oh my God, then we could shoot a lot of the talking head stuff, all in one place and make it fast. We can like use, news footage and B-roll, and we really got into the kind of tapestry of a true crime docu-feeling horror movie where, we could really play with so many different forms of media within a feature, which made it just, there's found footage like, like Blair Witch and like some great movies like that. But this we felt like was totally different in terms of being like a, faux documentary found footage horror, which we hadn't really heard of before. And that got us really excited.
So,
Sorry.
I was just going to say that on TikTok, there's like a lot of rumors that this was based off of like one serial killer or another. So I guess you guys are saying that that's not necessarily true. It was like a lot of different inspirations.
So Kendall Francois, is that how you're?
Kendall Francois was a real guy.
So it wasn't based on him, but then afterward, people were like, "Well, there was a serial killer in Poughkeepsie, New York." It's like, "Oh no, shit, who knew?"
Yeah,
We're like, that's what.
Yeah, a lot of people think it's about him, and it wasn't initially. I mean, it wasn't intended to be about him, but there were some eerie similarities for sure. But I mean, I think all of the like tactics that this character used and everything were all based in reality. And like, we did a ton of research, especially John. John was like in a very dark place for a while there. Drew time out on the research.
Yeah, I had to give trigger warnings like, hey, I'm about to tell you some crazy shit,
Yeah, exactly.
Because I was just like this walking, like I could hardly sleep, I could hardly eat for weeks because I just went, really headlong into it. And it's such a dark space to really try to, like, I want to get so deep into it that I can write it, realistically, or like I know what I know who this person is. And
we moved at some point.
Hard.
Sorry. We moved at some point and gave away like 2 bankers boxes worth of serial killer books to like Goodwill. We're like, what the F? Are we allowed to swear? I almost said what the real F, but then I switched it to F because I don't know if we can swear. I'll skip it. I don't have to
we super got into the profiling side of things and everything. That was one element that we really did, enjoy in terms of the psychology of it. And and we really wanted it to feel like super real and authentic on that front. And so you really want to see how this killer progressed and where he started, and like, and that it's kind of alarming how when you look at serial killers, how consistent the patterns really are in terms of their progression and where they start. And like you were mentioning, you know, couples or like young people, you know, it kind of has they tend to follow a pretty similar. Jennifer Gorman, there you are. on cue.
I
Jennifer.
have
Not
to.
gonna lie, that just scared me. So, whoever did that, good job.
I mean, that's a cute face.
That is a cute face. I remember this shooting day so
Shall we play
well.
this clip and see if it just
Okay, yeah. Oh no.
Seconds, 8 seconds.
You want to see what it looks like through the camera?
No. And I think I kind of got gory, but for those of you who haven't watched the film and you're in this comment section, just you have to watch the film. But this is the part where I was like, oh, my heart. And my husband, like, because we watched it last night together, and he was like, is this real? What is this? And he was like so disturbed. So you guys did a great job at, like, I told him several times, this is not a real movie. And then he's just like sitting there, he's looking up at the TV. He's like, is this real? I'm like, no. I promise you it's not. He was like so just like shock factor.
Yeah, but hearing it again, because it's been a long time, hearing Ben Messmer, like he's so good. Like I'll just jump in. I'm jumping around on the questions, but I think there were a few really good people who auditioned for the role of Ed. But I think part of the reason you guys gave it to Ben is he just seemed like he was having a good time. Like, you know, if a serial killer's probably quite enjoys what they're doing, otherwise they wouldn't bother, you know. And Ben just sort of played it with this off-putting, like, wow, this guy is really having a great day killing people.
Played it like a romance almost. It was so creepy. I mean, so many people auditioned for that and were playing it like crazy, like psycho killer, very twirly, and like where Ben played like a couple of these scenes almost like love scenes. We were like, oh my god, this is so upsetting and so like interesting. Yeah, he just played.
He's got like a Jason Segel quality almost. Like, oh, whatever, it's all good.
Yeah. And then I remember he ended the audition. He's like, well, I'm going to go hang out at some playgrounds. See you guys later. Wow. Wow, that is.
No.
I'm drinking my water right now.
I'm scared.
There she is.
So just quick, because I just didn't want to I don't want to get flagged on YouTube. I don't know what will flag us. But, you know, to your point, I guess it's another question I have for you guys, because I thought that, you know, you're talking about the actor and you're talking about the way that the perspective of the video is, you know, the camera is set, that what's really unique is that this was set in a way through the perspective of the killer. And yeah, there's a lot of found footage, but even like for the time that this came out, I don't recall anything being in the perspective of the killer. It was a lot more of the perspective of the victim, you know? So, and I think that adds a very scary element to it, because you're, as a viewer, you're forced to like literally succumb to this twisted mindset. And I guess like how did all of this come to play? Was it a lot of research? What, like, it just, to me, it's like, how can you get into that mindset? I don't know. It's just, yeah, very shocking to me. Like, it's good though. It's really well put out there. What did it take to get to that point?
Yeah, that's a nice question. Well, I'll say, like, you know, when Drew and I originally had the idea for this, we had only done comedies before. And so we had this idea for a horror movie. And I remember like one of our first things was, I was like, I feel like competent as a comedy director, because it's, you know, pretty simple shots. It's, you know, shot, reverse shot, no medium, no, you know, but I'm like, I don't know that I'm a good enough director to actually do horror. Because those are like real filmmakers, you know, those are like real directors. And so it took some, you know, I think in part because of that, I really wanted to think it through very carefully and spend a lot of time. And, you know, one of the things, Halloween, there's a moment in Halloween in the original where it's, you know, you're in his perspective, and it sort of forces the audience into the role of the killer. And it's so uncomfortable and so unnerving that we're like, oh, let's embody that with this character. Like, the danger is, as we get closer to someone, that person's in imminent danger. You know what I mean? And that's really unsettling. It really, I feel like Poughkeepsie Tapes really puts you in a very strange emotional place by the end of it. And there was a movie called Tarnation that was made by Jonathan Coet, and he made it for like $200. It was like he used iMovie to cobble together a bunch of home videos. And the thing with, you watch that, and it's about growing up with a schizophrenic mom and having mental health issues himself. And as you watch that, you feel like you're going crazy. And we were like, let's do this in a horror film where you feel like, hopefully, make the audience feel like they're slowly going crazy as they watch the movie. It just gets weirder and weirder and darker and stranger, and you know what I mean. And we really wanted to create something that felt very different. That frankly, we were trying to break into Hollywood, and we wanted something that people would notice. Yeah, and it did. It gave us a whole, it changed our lives, truly.
Yeah. And I want to just follow up on that Tarnation reference, because Tarnation's, the editing of that film is so intense and brilliant, but really jarring and really unsettling, and just like these hard cuts that kind of like throw you into a whole new, scene so abruptly all the time, and it just really leaves you kind of unsettled. And that was one thing we really kind of emulated with Poughkeepsie, was the editing style. And we just liked the format of like, you kind of lull people in with this talking head, kind of droning on about something, and then bam, you're right back into one of the tapes. And like we thought the like I don't know, those hard turns and abrupt turns were very unsettling, and I think it makes it an uncomfortable film to watch. But we thought it was effective in that way, and that we were going to use that as much as possible. It's like we get these great horror scenes, and we get to like just come out of nowhere with them, and that's fun.
Yeah, go for it.
Blair.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So I've met a lot of found footage filmmakers, oddly enough, and everybody has their own way of doing things. But I was curious about your actual scripts. Do you tend to write traditional screenplays, or are you leaning more towards scriptments, where you're kind of leaving the dialogue a little more open and allowing improv and organic moments for your actors?
Yeah, I'll say, like, we scripted it all. We scripted it all, and frankly, if we were to do this over again, I think there's some of the interviews and stuff. I think now I would have the maybe the courage to trust the process a little more, if that makes sense, and to let more improv happen, let more, you know what I mean? Like at the time, it was like, early days for us, and we were very like, careful, and we wanted to get everything right. And you know what I mean? We tried very hard to think through every, possible problem. And so, yeah, no, it was all scripted.
We also had 15 days to shoot the whole movie, so part of it was like, we felt like we didn't have time to like do a lot of improv and to experiment a lot in terms of the kind of documentary, the talking head side of things. But I think you're right though, John. If we were to do it over again, we'd probably loosen that up a little bit.
So acting wise, especially for talking heads, like it's hard to sound natural.
Totally.
It's hard to like find the words.
Yeah, totally. News is really hard to fake too. That was one thing that we our initial cut, we weren't really happy with our news, so we did like 2 days of additional photography a little bit later. We had already gotten into Tribeca Film Festival, but we're like, there's a couple things we want to touch up, and so we redid the news, and we're from Minneapolis, Minnesota originally, and we made contact with some news producer in Minneapolis, and he was like, excited about doing a story about Tribeca. I'm like, hey, I really need to like some real news guys to kind of reshoot some things. Could you help us out? He's like, done. He's like, I'm bringing he brought out 4 like, ABC, like, main network in Minneapolis, like real anchors that are on the news every night. got on a plane and flew to LA, and they let us use their backdrop. We rented, on a stage, the desk and everything, but we used their backdrop. We used their cameras. We used their 4 people. We spent one day with like a couple of them going out to like the cemetery and doing like an, on scene report. And so those were all like real people, doing fake news, our news. And it just changed the reality, the reality factor of the movie so much. It really helped a ton.
Yeah.
Like getting those genuine reactions just like makes it feel real. And like
Yeah,
that's the fun of found footage, is like straddling that line of narrative and reality. So
Totally. And news, even like the chyrons, I can always tell when I'm watching something, the chyrons are fake, or like, if the news person, even good actors, like really have a hard time doing that news person thing. Like it's such a specific.
I've noticed that with like big movies. It's true that since you guys pointed that out and then brought in the real news people, that it's true. Even like big budget things, the news people, it just feels fake. You're like, I don't know if the camera's wrong or the chyron's wrong. I don't know what's wrong, but this is not news.
Totally.
Actually, it's so
I'll say.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was going to say that is actually the one circumstance where we did allow more improv, because I realized when we over directed the news, it just didn't. It felt like we were doing it. Where when we had real news people, we had a real news camera guy, a real on air, on screen reporter. We're like, how would you do this? What would you write? Here's the situation. What would you write for this? Where camera guy, where would you stand to shoot this? You know what I mean? Like how would you do this? We kind of gave no direction for that specifically, because I realized I would only ruin it.
We have a question from one of the people in the chat. They asked, would you ever do a part 2, or was this supposed to be just like a one and done thing?
Great question.
It's funny you should ask that. Like we haven't announced anything to this effect, but the rights have reverted back to us. So we're currently talking about adapting a longer form version for television.
That's amazing. I want to get into the topic about the impact on the audience, because people are asking, they're gonna do more than one, and it's hitting TikTok, it's going viral, people are talking about it on social media. So in general, a lot of people say that this film, in a way gravitated towards the fact that it was banned. And so when something is forbidden, people gravitate towards it. What was your thoughts on that? And do you think that made an impact on your film?
Totally. Yeah.
I think it did. I mean, their plan was to, MGM. So MGM bought it, and they were going to put it in 2,500 theaters. They're like, "Oh, it's going to be great. We're going to pretend it's real. It's going to be like." We're like, "I don't know. It's not really a good, like a big feel good, like mainstream movie." Like, so we were kind of worried. We were like, "I guess they know what's up." And
but at the same time, very excited. Like 2,500 theaters. I don't know if this is a good idea, but 2,500 theaters.
Yeah, it was a wide release. Seemed a little dangerous. Yeah, like John said, they're going to kind of pretend it's real. They didn't want us doing any press or talking about it at all, so we would never be on the spot, having to lie or anything. But yeah, sorry, John, I cut you off.
Oh no, and we had like real like, oh gosh, I don't know that this is the right way to do this, and then at the last minute they got cold feet, they got spooked, and they're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this, and they pulled the plug kind of at the last minute, and then there was enough money against it that they couldn't release it on video because they'd already spent, so it was like this whole, it got stuck in this gray area for like 7-8 years, something like that.
Yeah,
but longer than that, right?
To your question, Steffany, though, the one kind of cool thing about when they decided to pull the plug, that if they would have pulled the plug 3 or 4 months before the release date, nobody would have even known about the movie other than the people who saw it at Tribeca. But because they pulled the plug so late, they were like putting the trailer out in front of like big movies, in front of like I Am Legend, and there's huge movies that were, leading with the Poughkeepsie Tapes trailer, right up to like a month before it was supposed to come out. So a lot of people, it kind of the trailer reached a really, really wide audience, and then it just disappeared. And I think that combination of like really marketing it and then yanking it, gave it this kind of like, wait, what happened to that movie, and why won't they release it? And like, it just begs so many questions that I think really intrigued audiences, and it drove us crazy because of course we wanted it out there, and anyway, it didn't have to be 2,500 theaters. It could have been even on video, we just wanted it out, and it was just kind of like locked away. But I think in all those years, it just kind of continued to, get this following, and like a leaked kind of early cut was on YouTube, which we were totally happy with people, watching it that way. What drove us crazy about that is like an early, not anywhere near the final cut, and so it's kind of like not the best version of it in our mind. So that kind of bothered us, but it was still seemed to be making a lot of waves. So
Yeah, I mean, sorry, did you, Sarah?
I had a question, but you go first.
Yeah, I guess like to follow up with that too, do you think that, like, what do you think? I mean, is that part of the reason why you think this built like this cult-like following, or why do you think it built like this cult-like following?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think, people had to know someone to see it, or, it became this thing, this kind of secret thing that people passed around and then would watch by themselves. It wasn't in a theater. It was like, I feel like Poughkeepsie Tapes like almost plays better by yourself at home. Our previous movie had been a comedy, and that movie plays great in an audience, in a big room with lots of people laughing. But by yourself, it sort of fell flat. Whereas this was the opposite. It was like by yourself, it's really scary. Whereas in a theater, it's a different kind of experience. I think, I don't know. I feel like it served it well, to play like that.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of fun that you have to commit. Well, you don't anymore, but you had to commit a little bit of a crime to see it. You know what I mean? So you're watching it with a slightly guilty feeling of like, I'm not supposed to do this. It's always fun. And then also, I think in terms of like being culty, I think the fact that it was sort of interactive, like you had to do more than just drive to the theater. You had to like go find it. And then, maybe you got a hookup, and that made you feel cool that you knew somebody was cool enough to like, you had to be interactive. And then it kind of naturally led to discussions of like, is this real?
Yeah.
What is this? Who is this based on? Is it based on anyone? And I think it's really interesting to me that sort of question of like, is this real? Are parts of this real? Continues, because like obviously it's not real. It'd be a snuff film. We'd be, we'd be monsters. But that question persists, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, that is such a huge part of it. I think that the conversation after the fact of like,
it's interactive.
I have to talk to someone to find out what in this is real or not. Like that, I think is maybe one of the elements that really elevated its status over the years.
Yeah, I mean, like imagine, let me see, I think it's like 5 seconds, but if like watching this by yourself and you're just like, what am I watching?
This is my favorite.
Yeah, that part, because I watched this late at night. My husband was not like very just shocked at this whole thing. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting creeped out. I saw this and I'm like, what is happening? Like, what is going on?
Sarah was explaining to us that it's like big on TikTok. I'm like, I don't even know what you mean. I'm so old. So I got my 12-year-old daughter, and I was like, what does this mean that it's on TikTok? Because my daughter does TikTok, but all I see is people putting on makeup, which everyone in middle school is very interested in, people applying makeup and face masks.
Well,
so it's like,
that's also like, everyone talks about like the corner of TikTok. Like you guys are in like the horror corner of TikTok. She's clearly on the makeup.
So I made her do it. I was like, I don't know how to do this. Where's the TikTok? And so I made her show me, and she's never seen it, So she showed me that she found that one of the finger walk, with the mask. She was not pleased at all. She was very creeped out.
You just ruined her algorithm for life. She's going to be like, go.
I'm like, that's not the algorithm is messed up. I'm really happy that TikTok could really bring the two of you together in that way as a family.
Fell asleep in her bed that night.
My question was, and I'd love to hear Blair and Steffany's thoughts on this too after everybody else chats, but John and Drew, you were talking about the other filmmaker who had like a $200 budget. And I find that not just with younger filmmakers, but especially in horror, is that a lot of filmmakers have this smaller budget. And I wonder if with what you guys did, especially with the whole like found footage genre, do you find that there are some parts of it that are restricting, but also maybe helpful in terms of direction that actually keep you more focused as a writer and as a creator?
100%.
100%. Yeah. In fact, I'll say like, getting into TV moves so much faster than movies. And that's part of what we love about that space is you can't try to overthink. You can't try, you know what I mean? You have to keep moving, and it really frees up so much creative, or, you know, our movie As Above, So Below, like that. We went from pitch to first director's cut in 7 months. And that was kind of our first, like, oh, this has to move fast because we had a specific window we had to fit it in. And it kept us in this really intuitive, like, playful space that, you know, we would have thought our way out of, if that makes sense, if we had more time. And you know, with Poughkeepsie Tapes, we're like, okay, we don't have money. What if we did all the interviews on film, but we shoot those over 2 days, and then we do all the killer stuff on video, and most of the movie is the video. So it's like we had a film camera for 2 days, but we still got that film kind of feel, you know. So I don't know, it opened up a lot of creativity for us. You know, and then we had to find ways to, you know, some of the video like glitches and stuff that happen are like hiding palm trees and stuff, because, you know, it's supposed to be in Poughkeepsie, and we're like, oh, there's a palm tree, like glitchy, you know. And we did all these things that, you know, really brought a feel to it that, you know, we wouldn't have necessarily found our way into.
Yeah, found footage is so great for budgetary reasons too, because you can only see what you see from that camera. You're never expecting to see, you know, a big crane shot or a big, you know, wide shots, or, you know, I remember on As Above, we're like, oh, we're building, you know, most of us in the real catacombs, we had to build some stuff, and like, okay, we can't afford to build this half of it. Like, okay, well, we'll just never look that way, you know, we'll just only look this way. And you can get away with that so much in found footage, and it's such a shorthand with audiences now too, is they just understand that what you're seeing through that lens is the movie, and that's it. And it's expected to feel imperfect. I think, you know, one thing we did on Poughkeepsie with our cinematographer, Sean Dufresne was his name, but we're like, everything needs to be just a little late, you know, and focus needs to be a little late, and, you know, you have to kind of work at those imperfections to make it not feel too planned. And when we went into quarantine and we're shooting on this, you know, big Sony you know, what was it, the F-23 back then? Like, yeah, you know, right. Big, you know, expensive, good camera and really good crews with, you know, great focus puller and everything. We had to tell everyone, like, I know you can hit the mark the second the camera turns, but we need you to delay it by a half second and really, you know, hide the fact that we have this great equipment and we have a real budget on quarantine. We want it to look like we don't. And so when you actually don't have a budget, it really does help.
Tell the story about Sean and the opening thing, because I know you guys were like, you had been in film festivals, you had programmed film festivals, and it's understood that, like, if something looks like it cost a few bucks, you know, you'd like it better.
Yeah.
So the boys had a plan to make the movie look much more expensive than it was by having an expensive looking opening image. So will you guys tell that story?
Yeah. So Sean Dufresne and I went up we rented a helicopter for like $200 to go up over the Poughkeepsie River Valley. And then we took off the doors. And so Sean had the camera on his shoulder and he's leaning out the open door of the helicopter and just filming, like leaning out, like over nothing.
Beautiful autumn leaves.
About halfway, autumn leaves. It was beautiful. We're like going up the river. And I looked down and I realized with the jostling of the camera, it's unbuckled all his buckles. So he's not actually strapped in. He's leaning out the window with this super heavy camera, not buckled in at all. And I was like, Sean, like, and I pointed at the thing and he just like kind of froze, and then I helped rebuckle him. And so yeah, we almost that would.
Whenever I think of that, I think there's like an alternate universe where things went horribly wrong. Like, it's so fortunate that everything worked out.
That was the first thing we shot too. The three of us went out to Poughkeepsie and shot like 3 days of just B-roll, just no sound or anything, just B-roll, and that we could pepper throughout the film to really, you know, get the location. But yeah, the opening credit helicopter shot, you know, most people would pay for, you know, a helicopter mount so the camera doesn't bounce, you know, you don't fall off the side. But yeah, we were like a 2-person helicopter with 3 people jammed in there and a camera. It was very low budget.
And horror movies and helicopters don't mix well.
They don't. That is
like a good John Landis.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. We should know better.
Well, love all this. I just want to say that we're about halfway through, and I definitely want to transition to some of the other stuff. I have one last question for Stacy in terms of like acting and also going into writing and stuff. And then, Stacy, did you prepare the intro?
The intro song, my God, yes. I've just been
great.
sitting on it,
We'll
dying inside.
We'll use that as like a little transition. But
Palate
anyway,
cleanser.
Yes. So Stacy, Steffany and I were talking about this earlier today. She was saying she was listening to the podcast. For those of you who just tuned in, Stacy, Drew, and John have a brand new podcast called The Showrunner Show. We'll put the link in there and we'll talk about it a little bit more later. But Stacy talks about how she was an actor, has been an actor, and then you also are a writer, producer, and many other things. What is it like now that you've I guess you also probably still continue to act, but that you have been focusing on writing and you're over it. Writing. We're done. Producing, writing, and then looking back at this, now that you've moved into a different part of your career, like looking back on that as an actor.
Oh, okay. Looking back, so yeah, I'm not an actor anymore. I have this plan that maybe in like 20 years, maybe when I'm in my 70s, it'd be fun to act again. Cause I think I'd be a really good type as an old woman. I think that'd be good. But
John,
looking back, remember that note to self, pull a Ruth Gordon. But yeah, I stopped acting. I don't know. Okay. The last thing I did was an episode of Code Black, and I was playing a character. I went to the audition and it was for the role of a woman who, it was a medical drama and she's having an orgasm and she can't stop. And so I had to play the whole, like 4 different scenes, having an orgasm the whole time. And as I was auditioning for the thing, I was like, dear God, beforehand in the bathroom, I was like, this is so stupid. I can't stand being an actor anymore. It's so hard. It's nothing but constant rejection. Just give me a sign. Please just give me a sign. And I booked it, and I was like, well, that worked, I guess, and I was happy. And it was really fun and everybody's really nice. So it was stupid in a good way. I don't mean it was stupid, but it was whatever. But then a year later, I was like, you gave me the sign, but you know what? I can't do this anymore. This is just, I don't have it. But this hosting thing, like the podcast we've been doing and doing stuff like this, it's so fun because it's kind of like acting because you're, talking, but you don't have to prepare anything. You don't have to do any work. It's great. But when I look back, at the Poughkeepsie Tapes, I'm incredibly fond of it. Like it's really the only time, a couple of times in college, I went to college for theater. A couple of times I got to be a lead, but I like never got to be a lead. I'm always like the little weirdo, So it was so fun to be a lead in something. And I'm so proud of it. And it was so fun working with these guys. And I wasn't supposed to have the role. I was, because I was in my 30s at the time and the character's like 19 and I was just helping them out being a reader. So I was playing Cheryl, reading Cheryl for everyone auditioning for Ed or auditioning for different things. And then I did such a good job. They gave it to me. Woo! And yeah, John, I think it was during our wedding actually, or during the honeymoon or something. You were like, you want to play it? I'm like, yeah. Anyway.
It was before that. But
before that. Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, I think Drew. It's during the auditions. Drew was like, dude, nobody's come close to, nobody's come close to what Stace is doing in there. And like, she kept like getting us almost like in tears the way she was like, playing the role was so heartfelt and, like it was like actually getting us choked up, with her off screen, shenanigans. So
I really feel for Cheryl. Like I really like that character. And I think about people usually try to take characters and make them like more special, more brilliant. And in my mind, she's just like a very normal person, like a nice, like kind of moody, maybe not that ambitious, has problems with her mom, just like a normal young person, and then this extraordinary thing happens to her, an awful extraordinary thing, but it kind of makes her a very special character. But anyway, I thought that was a fun arc to go from, instead of being like, I'm a genius, I'm brilliant in all things, and now this crazy thing happens. I thought it'd be kind of fun to go from just a totally regular person to a broken person. It seemed like a cool arc.
Stacy too was also like not only like so much, hands down the best, better than anyone who came in an audition for her. She was just kind of stole it. Hey, Chris. But also like, a lot of the research we were doing for Cheryl, there's a girl in California that was, put in this like coffin under her captor's bed for years. And like
Yeah.
there was that whole story. And like we were just watching all these crazy documentaries and front lines and whatever, like about all these crazy stories. And it would be me, John, and Stacy watching these. So it was like you knew all the stuff and like all
Yes.
the real research we were trying to emulate. Like you had such a head start on everybody in terms of like what this this person, how broken she was and just who she was. And then and then also we knew you were like crazy flexible and we could like you'd let us hog tie.
I remember being in the bedroom hog tying. I think I did it to myself, but yeah, I practiced hog tying.
I'm like, okay, not many other people are gonna let us do that.
Well,
I like to pull me out of a grave. That was
Was
awesome.
that you crawling too? That was you crawling. So like,
No.
oh,
That was a
wasn't it?
dancer playing Ed. So Ben
Oh,
couldn't
Ed,
play.
right.
Ben couldn't do that, but you guys got a dancer, right? Was he French?
Yeah.
Can't remember.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
French dancer.
I don't think was he?
Yes.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah,
Talented.
we
fellow.
had a vision for that, and wanted to do something really specific for that, and just make it feel like a nightmare kind of moment.
Yeah.
That's
Isn't it cool though? That's
It's
scary.
our guy that stands up at the end is our
yeah.
guy, but yeah, it was a little Texas
Yeah.
switch in there.
Yep.
It's like that backwards. It's like that disgusting thing they added to The Exorcist. Disgusting in a good way. You know, when she crab walks down the stairs. Oh, it's so scary.
Well, there was an image John found of like this dancer in tights. It kind of just emulated it exactly, but like was on his palms and his tiptoes and had like a mask on his face and a mask on the top of his head. Like, God, that is such a creepy image. And we tried as much as possible to kind of like find these references and then like recreate them and for reasons we don't have to really understand. We just know this person's really theatrical and really cares about the tape itself. Yeah.
I'll show it again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Steffany, if you're down to move on, we can get Stacy to do the intro. So for those of you who are tuning in, Stacy makes a new intro for every episode of the Showrunner Show podcast. So Stacy asked if she could do the same for this Something Scary live stream. So take it away, my friend.
Something scary, like tarantulas that are hairy, or sweaty men named Barry or Larry. That's scary. Something creepy that will keep you from going too sleepy. That's the purpose of our show. Something scary.
Wow, we're gonna have to get
Not bad. I'm sure it's perfectly in tone with all their other.
full accompaniment of that.
It's fun.
You know it's scary because I trilled my R's.
Really good. I liked the dialect. There's a dialect choice as well as like a little vampire.
Yeah, that was some Transylvanian.
Very Transylvanian.
I did a
Love it.
lot
I
of
mean-
research for that.
Thanks, Stacy.
Yes.
Okay, so I was really excited. By the way, I love that. That was really enjoyable. Thank you for that. So
That's yours, by the way. Use that every episode. I know you're going to want to. I mean,
yes.
nailed it.
I'm gonna have to get you to like teach me how to do that so I can record the podcast. Do that. Creepy.
Okay, so I know that you mentioned that you guys also worked on Quarantine, and I was pleasantly like happy about this because I remember watching this film and being really freaked out by this, the idea that like you're going to a place and there's a quarantine. And in a way, I feel like it's a lot more relevant even now because, it's a title that people use. It's a common household word. And especially now, like with the pandemic and everything. And so I guess like my question is, can you discuss like this film and how you guys honored like, playing with a quarantine, but adding in the elements of horror? Like, how did this all come to play? Can you talk about the ideation, the whole process of this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this we came on to, so the Poughkeepsie Tapes premiered at Tribeca, and Roy Lee, who was one of the producers of Quarantine, they had the rights to the Spanish film called Rec, which is a fantastic
REC, yeah.
REC, which is a fantastic movie, and they had the rights to that, and they invited us to pitch on it. And so we were, we had, done a small movie, and they invited us in to pitch on this big movie. And we, then learned a week into it that, there was like big directors going out for this also. So we were totally outgunned, and we're like, you know what? None of them can overwork the two of us working as hard as we can. And so we showed up with storyboards, scripts, rewrites for the script, and like ways, pictures of how we'd like the building to look like. We showed up like having worked so hard, and I think it really showed through. And we just, I have to say, like, watching the movie Wreck, we were like, oh, there's nobody better for this movie than us. Like, we really believed that, the Poughkeepsie Tapes really gave us a skill set that was special in that space. And there hadn't really, this was pre-Cloverfield, you know what I mean? A lot of the kind of resurgence of found footage. And so it was like, they didn't fully understand what the movie was. And it was almost like we were selling the movie they owned to them, if that makes sense. And then we just tried really hard not to, our movie needed to be longer than the original. So we, added things and embellished things and leaned into some things, but we tried really hard not to ruin what was working, but then add a little more flourish to it. And so yeah, that was kind of our way into that.
I remember some of the reviews at the time, like, I don't read reviews anymore because it's just a cruel thing to do. But some of the reviews at the time were like, it's a shot-by-shot remake. And that made me so mad because you guys added, granted, the original was great. It was great. But you guys added some sweet scenes. Like, some of the new creative stuff was great.
Yeah, and we had such a good show. But a lot of people don't realize what we were going off of when we did that as a remake was that we hadn't even seen the movie. It was like a 2-minute trailer and a 70-page script when we initially,
oh, that's right.
Initially wrote the script. And so they were kind of like, whatever you guys want to do, because it was just this, it was a small Spanish film that I think the American producers, I don't think, had any idea that it was going to like kind of break out and become its own big thing. And then, like, deep into pre-production, Wreck actually came out in Spain and did become kind of a hit movie, and very much a hit movie in Spain, that's for sure. But it even became kind of a hit movie in America. And then it was like, a whole, they expanded from their original script too, because their original script was very short. So they obviously expanded as well. But then it became like kind of this comparison thing, which is a little uncomfortable. But honestly, it was like a total dream. Like, when John and I got the job, it was with, these producers, Roy Lee and Doug Davison, who had done all these, awesome horror movies, The Grudges and The Rings, and like, big deal guys. And but it didn't have a studio yet, and so we went around town with them to sell it, to Paramount, to Sony, and Sony picked it up. We thought we might just do it independent for like a few million, and we were really the guys who could make this movie for a small number, and that was part of the reason we got hired. And then we sold it to Sony, and then they suddenly wanted to make it. We got to build the whole apartment building on a stage, and and this is 3 months after we premiered Poughkeepsie Tapes at Tribeca. 3 months later, we're building a 3.5 story building on a stage at Sony. I mean, it was just like a total, like, dream come true kind of.
And they gifted you those ridiculous cars for a little bit. So it was their first studio movie, and there was some kind of tie-in. I don't know why, but what was it, like a Ford Escalade or something?
It was a Cadillac, right? A Cadillac Escalade, is that right?
Yeah. Sony had some deal with it. They're like, do you guys want Escalades to drive during the shoot?
For like 3 months.
So it was like Drew and I had the most ridiculous cars, like just looking like such dopes.
They were
like 100 feet long. It was
they were like
so
super
big.
extended. John and I would pull in like to the Sony lot every day, like right next to each other, like we look like clear and present danger motorcade coming in, like Obama's here or something. Oh my God.
And the thing is, at the time, it was so funny because we were so broke. I remember when we pitched Sony, like, we're like, that pitch went great, and then we're like, went to Starbucks to get coffees. and like our $4, you know, like our card like was rejected for $4 worth of coffee. We're like, we literally don't have $4, you know,
to celebrate.
And
There.
And a cool car.
But we have an Escalade.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're on an Escalade.
Yeah, that we had to give back.
Yeah.
Thank you, Drew. He said, I saw that movie. That's my favorite movie. Oh, thanks. Well, you guys, you know, thanks for saying that. And
Yeah, it's super
Thank
nice.
you. Thank you, Drew.
I had a question. So, because one of the things that I did notice with both Quarantine and the Poughkeepsie Tapes is that there is a distinction between like the Poughkeepsie Tapes. There's several different scenes, right? Because the character is now changing motives and everything versus Quarantine, like you're in one confined space. What was that like? Because I imagine that you're building a set and you're doing found footage, going from like several different scenes and different essentially sets to now like a building. What was like the challenging thing from going from that to now this confined space? And did it take longer? Was it short amount of time? What was that like for you guys?
Oh, that's a great question. It's
Yeah.
I would say in some ways Quarantine like seems simpler because it's one space and stuff, but it was really trying to find creative ways to get the camera in the right place. We really wanted it to feel like the camera is just running for like an hour, not like a whole bunch of cuts, and you know what I mean? So we tried to stitch together basically 5-minute long sequences every day, which I think if we were to do it over again, we would go like, it'd be a lot simpler is like allow like little glitchy cuts, and like all other found footage, they have like cuts in it and you don't even notice it. It's just part of the genre. But this was on the early end of found footage. And so we hadn't, so we really thought like, we'll string together, it'll be a series of oneers and we'll do a 5-minute long oneer every day. And that'll be our movie. And we told the studio, we're like, hey, if you realize we haven't shot anything by lunch, don't get worried. Like we'll get it. Like, but it's not going to be your typical, like you shoot, a shot of someone looking at their watch to start the day so that they look at the report and they go, oh, they got a shot off 5 minutes into the day. They're, they know what they're doing. This was like at lunch every day, there would be like this swarm of studio people like, why aren't you shooting yet? And we'd be like, we told you this is exactly what this was going to be. And, but it was really hard. It was a lot of choreography. I was still a, pretty unexperienced. I wasn't necessarily ready for that kind of scale. Like there was a lot of actors, a lot of producers. We were on the Sony lot. And Drew at one point had to pull the producers aside and be like, you're driving them crazy. Just let them have like 5 takes at it before you swarm. And then when you do, come to me first. And so we sort of, we're learning our kind of internal, like, how do we interface with all the people so yeah, it was really difficult at moments.
Yeah, we had never worked with other producers or the studio, like that was a learning experience for us. But I think you nailed it, John. The choreography, like on Poughkeepsie Tapes, there's a lot of the found footage stuff was like the cameraman who was, the killer and 1 or 2 other, maybe 2 other characters.
Mm-hmm.
There was never really, whereas Quarantine was like a dozen people and you had, it's just the blocking was such a, and you don't have a lot of time to rehearse ahead of time. So you're kind of doing it all on the day. So the choreography was really tricky.
So I guess like to add, another follow-up question to what you just said. So because it's a lot of people and it's a little bit more difficult setup because there's so many hands involved, was there any like outtakes or was like, that's the take, right? Like they're, if they're running down the stairs in Quarantine or up the stairs, is that the take? Even if you didn't get the whole scene to make it more realistic?
That is the take. Yeah, that is the take. So, I mean, essentially in post, and Stace can attest to this, we watched the cut, like the final cut or the editor's cut, like after we finished shooting, we strung it all together and we watched it. And I called Stacy, like, I totally fucked this up. Like, they're never going to let me do anything. Like I had this like kind of existential crisis and she's like, just get in there and dig in. And so Drew and I and our editor, Elliot Greenberg, who it was his first big movie too. So the 3 of us were like, okay, this scene needs to be shorter. How do we make it shorter? And we started finding all these creative ways to in fact, Elliot's company name is Hidden Cuts. That's still because we had to find all these ways to hide cuts. Like someone would pass the camera and we'd do a wipe on their, on the front edge of their body and use that to cut in a little deeper into the scene. And we had to learn how to manipulate what we had shot in creative ways that has really empowered us to, be like mediocre filmmakers and still get a good product.
That's the spirit.
Over and over. Because I'm saying that facetiously, but like, we've really learned the craft of post and how much you can actually manipulate what doesn't seem editable at the time, and that I feel like we learned so much in that process, and we were able to get into a place where it felt like propulsive.
Can I quickly ask John, how was it working with Jennifer?
Oh, it was great. I mean, she is such a pro, you know what I mean? Like she was like very intense, she sort of like, she wasn't like one of those actors who like between takes is like yucking it up, like George Clooney style. Like, she was focused and really in it. And that was great. We sort of, one thing I learned on the Poughkeepsie Tapes from Stacy is like, if the actor is in it and feeling something, don't try to be like a caretaker and be like, are you okay? Are you feeling okay? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Just get, sometimes you got to give actors their space to be in it. And I think, she was amazing.
Did she do Exorcism of Emily Rose before quarantine or after?
Before.
That was before.
We loved her in that. Absolutely loved her in that. And
yeah,
it was just an absolute coup for us to get Jennifer Carpenter on quarantine, because we our biggest concern is like, okay, we have to go make a found footage movie now on a bigger budget with a studio, and they're going to have a lot of ideas about casting, and they're not going to care as much as we do about the actor being a brilliant actor. I mean, it takes a really good actor to pull off found footage, just hands down. Even if you can, find ways to cut around and everything, like you just need really, really good actors. And we were very concerned we were going to get pushed into casting our lead with someone that was maybe a star or someone who was popular, but may not have quite the chops to pull that movie off. And so when we started circling Jennifer, we're like, oh, please, dear God, let us, lock her down and cast her. So she was a really that was really
her
big win for us.
And her body is just she's
incredible.
She and I had a little thing together where I'm like, I'm all infected, I'm attacking her. Anyway, I had done very little film and TV. I had done a lot of stage, and in stage you don't actually hit someone or attack someone. You do stage stuff. So anyway, my character was supposed to attack her character. And I kept doing it, but I wasn't really doing it. I was like touching her, but I wasn't like putting any weight into it because I didn't think I was supposed to. I thought that was bad. And after like 4 takes, she's like, oh my God, you weigh 80 pounds. Just hit me. Just kill me. I was like, very good. Good to know. I shall now commence attacking you.
A lot of people don't realize too, a fun casting detail on quarantine is the little girl was Joey King, which a lot of people don't realize, now that she's, so successful and great as an adult.
Call us, Joey. Call us.
Yeah. Leaving messages.
All right. Well, we're almost done with the hour, but I wanted to make sure that everyone listening knows a little bit just about the Showrunner Show podcast, and just if you guys want to quickly talk about it, I can summarize it, and then we did it.
And then we did it.
We did it.
Yeah. Our podcast is basically kind of a nuts and bolts, like, here's the process of making television. We use television as the point to talk about, just because there's so much writing and there's so many different facets of it. But we tell a lot of stories from making movies and just all the ups and downs, and try to give a realistic portrait of what it's like to be in that space.
A showrunner is kind of, I mean, in case people don't know, it's kind of the creative boss of TV. You know, you have producer bosses and director bosses, but the kind of the head creative is the showrunner, kind of in charge of everything. And so we have interesting conversations with, like, we'll talk to an editor and say, what do you like from a showrunner? What do you like the relationship to be like? Or then, a composer, or I don't know, casting, and sort of talk to each different person about what their experience is like working with a variety of bosses.
Yeah, because we want to see more writers. We want to see more writers feel more empowered to do, to take that kind of leadership role.
Yeah, to take some of that mystery out of it, because it's just a job. It's a really hard job and a really exciting big job, but it's still just a job.
And really different than directing or producing features, which I feel like there's a million books about and document. There's so much material in that space where we realize there just really isn't much that exists in the show running TV creation world. And so there you go.
You have an episode on that.
We do.
We
do.
I think,
and if you listen, you get to hear a new theme song every week, and boy, each one is better than the next.
For no other reason.
I hope there's like a fun, like kind of like 80s theme, like infomercial that's like the greatest hits of the show. There you go. And you can play
I love it so much.
Play a character. I love that. Okay, yeah. So give everyone a follow. There's a comment there that I made with Steffany and Blair, and the podcast that we just mentioned. That's all that information is there. Thank you so much, Steffany. Anything else you want to add?
No, this was amazing. Thank you guys for coming on and talking to us. I really enjoyed this conversation. You guys are great chemistry, great energy all around. Thank you.
Thanks so much, man.
Thank you.
Really great.
I'm excited to go check out these horror movies.
Yeah, me too.
Bye.
We did it.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks so much, guys.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.